Let your sweet tooth guide your city planning. This is our preview of Sweetlands.
Sweetland is a worker placement game about building a confectionery city, and I really like when I was able to get some action chains going.
Don't let the sugary theme fool you. This is a very crunchy game with a lot of strategic decisions that need to be made on every move. We'll tell you all about it after this quick how to play.
The game is played in several phases over 5 rounds.
During the action phase, on each player's turn, they can either pay coins to play cards, turn in cards to perform worker placement actions, perform free actions, or pass.
The cards that players play and the actions they take will help them increase their income machine and build up their sweet cities.
To build up their maps, players will need to lay down land tiles, build buildings and roads, and connect their seaports.
Players can also increase their possible endgame scoring on several prosperity tracks, focusing on the goals that benefits them the most.
After 5 rounds, players add up their victory points from cities, prosperity tracks, and other numerous ways of scoring.
The player with the most victory points wins.
We were sent a prototype copy from the publisher so that we could do this preview video. The final copy may be different from what you see here.
If you'd like to find out more information or back the Kickstarter, check out the links in the description below.
The theme is what immediately caught my attention because it made me think of childhood, like Candyland, sweets, things like that. So I thought it would be an easier game. However, this is actually a really heavy Euro, crunchy game. There's a lot that you have to look at. There's a lot you can do on your turn. So much that you can't do everything. You have to choose the right path to try to score and be as efficient as possible with your scoring. Because if you try to do everything, you're going to be cutting yourself thin and you won't be able to achieve some of your goals to score points.
Definitely when we got this to the table, like Kenny said, there is a lot. I mean, you look at your own player board, you look at this board, there's another track here, there's a couple tracks just everywhere, and then you're kind of building your little map too. So a lot of things to keep track of, and then you got the other players that you're trying to keep track of too.
During the action phase is when most of the excitement is going to be happening, is when you're going to be doing most of your actions. And for the most part, it's either going to be paying money to play cards that are in your hand, or turning in your cards to perform worker placement actions on the main board. And those worker placement actions are first come, first serve. There are 3 spots in each one, and they progressively get more expensive. So for the first spot, you need to pay 1 card. For the second spot, you need to pay 2 cards, and then 3 cards. So if you really want a certain action and don't want it to be too expensive in terms of card cost, then you need to make sure you do that action sooner. The amount of cards, this is only some of the cards, this isn't even the whole deck. The whole deck is probably this high, but the amount of cards that are there, and the cards that you have in your hand, and the way that you're playing them to try to build your chains and try to increase your income tracks and all that kind of stuff, it really does remind me of Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars is a little bit more expensive, that you have to buy the cards and pay for the cards. However, I feel like you can build your income a little bit faster in Terraforming Mars. However, in this one, in most of the 5 rounds, playing the cards is, okay, I might be able to afford 1, possibly 2, maybe if I'm lucky 3 cards this round. What are going to be the best ones and which ones am I definitely not going to play? Those are the cards I'm turning in to perform my actions. So those are some of the things you have to think about is what's the good card that I'd have to play that I can afford, and what is basically the garbage in terms of my strategy this game that I'm giving up to perform my actions in the worker placement area.
The cards themselves are pretty straightforward and pretty easy to understand with the icons and symbols. Yeah, you'll probably need to have a little key there, but for the most part, it does make sense whether you're gaining or paying. I will say though, given the number of cards, just like, let's say, for example, Terraforming Mars, there's just that luck of the draw where you could statistically just draw all the bad cards that just can't help you each time or each round. I'm sure they've done some math to kind of balance that out, like every 10 cards should have 5 things to help you build your engine or something like that. There are other things around that you can do with the actions or on your board that can help you mitigate that.
The next thing that you'll be focusing on while playing, other than playing the cards and performing the actions, is to build up your cities on your map board. So every player's going to have their own map board. So it's kind of like the map on the Mars and Terraforming Mars, and I hate to keep going back to that, but it really does remind me of a Candyland version of Terraforming Mars. But each player's going to have their own map, and you're going to start off building from the city capital area and building out and playing all these tiles. So you have the blue tiles, the orange tiles, the green tiles, and the gray tiles, and they will all have different actions that you can perform. So like, for example, the green, when you turn that over, you can either increase one of your green prosperity tracks, which is how you'll score points at the end of the game, or you can increase your lumber income track over on your board. So while you're building up your map, you're laying land tiles, you're building rows, you're flipping those tiles over, you can then choose which ability you want, which can then also increase your income track. So even if you're not getting the best cards to help build the engine in terms of your income, you can then take worker placement actions by getting rid of those cards and then building up your map and then increasing your income that way. So there's several different ways that you can chain the actions that you're performing to build up the different types of engines that you can go after. There's just a lot to think about. So depending on the cards in your hand, if you get really lucky with the cards in your hand, some of your decisions might be easier than if you're going through a tough route of bad luck and you have all these bad cards. Then it is just a matter of which worker placement actions will you be able to do to help you build your city to then work on your engine.
The prosperity track is really something to keep an eye out on because there's 6 different tracks. So you got to kind of track that as far as like, okay, what's my end game goal? What am I building to? Right now I got a lot of lands or I don't have that many rabbits. You kind of have to pick and choose because obviously there's just so much that you probably can't move all 6 down to the very end and get the highest multiplier. That in the very beginning, kind of you really have to think about like, where am I going? However, you don't have to start on a certain track technically. You could build up your engine and then maybe mid-game start focusing on which track to move down.
Not only is there a lot to think about and a lot to do, but there are a lot of pieces in this game. So there's a lot of setup. It requires a lot of table retail space. So each player is going to have their own board that flips up to become dual layer, and then you put your character card inside, and there's a lot of different characters with asymmetric powers that you can have as you're playing. And then you have all your pieces on your board that when you build these will give you bonuses as well. Plus every player has their food track and industry track board that has the rabbits and the milk cartons, and that's where your carriage and your train go. Plus you have the map board. So each player has all 3 of those. Plus you have the shared board. Plus you have the other boards that give you bonuses at the start during the income phase. Plus you need a place to put all your piles of tiles, roads, money cubes, diamonds. You need a place to put your cards and your discard pile. So there is a lot to this game. So there's a lot of bang for the buck because all the pieces are really fun. And I really enjoy the theming of the buildings. They're confectionery buildings as you're building your confectionery city. There's just a lot of it. So not only is there a lot of setup, but there's also, all right, we're all done playing. Now there's still another 15, 20 minutes of putting everything back away.
Yeah, it's like, oh, final score is this. All right, fun night, guys. Like, you sit back down and you
put all those
this
pieces away.
So this game definitely has that mechanic that I really like, the engine building. However, I will say, I just couldn't find my engine until middle of the game, and I wish I started strong in the very beginning.
There's a lot about this game that I like. It has the engine building, and it will really remind you of Terraforming Mars because of the cards, because of your income tracks that you're trying to increase, and you get that income at the beginning of each round to then pay to do actions later on. I really like that there are all these prosperity tracks, lots of ways to score, because depending on the luck of the draw with the cards, depending on how you're building your map out, you really need to decide, okay, well, I can go after these 2, but if I do those, then I can really score high. And it's okay if I don't get those other 4. I like the worker placement element. I like everything about it. I just like all the individual pieces by themselves. Now that kind of leads into my dislike, which is I just feel like there's too much going on. If this was slimmed down just slightly, if the game played a 2-player game in under 2 hours, or if a 3-player game in under like 2.5, or even under 2 hours for a 3-player game, if it played a little bit quicker, if it just a few things less so that you can then build up more. So instead of having 100 options and you got to figure out the best 20, I rather there only be like 60 options and you got to find the best 40. So I rather have a tad fewer options, but be able to do more things rather than really having to pick and choose and go after them. That's me personally. I know some people really like those really heavy, crunchy Euros, but me, I just wish there was slightly less stuff. What about you? What did you not like?
Kind of what you alluded to at the top, like you can't do everything. And I think that just kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't hit that completist like itch where it's like, oh, the whole map's covered, or oh, I was able to complete a whole row. Because if you did commit to that, you probably aren't doing so well in other areas. If it was just a little bit less steps, maybe a little bit less buildings, it would have scratched that completist itch. Overall, the art, the theming, the graphics, everything on the pieces, I really liked. It seems really close to a finished product if it isn't already a finished product. I will say, probably middle of the game, I was like, oh man, there's only 2 more rounds left. When I had that feeling, I knew I liked it and I wanted to play more. But then I realized, wait a minute, there's about an hour and a half left. So, you know, there's a lot going on. I know I'm gonna have fun with this, but if it was just a little bit less, I'd probably like it even more.
Overall, I love a lot about this game. It is a very heavy, crunchy Euro game, and most of the time we like those games. We just can never find the time to really get them to the table. Lots of setup, long time to play, and lots of packing away. So if we're having a game night and we want to play a lot of games, a heavy, crunchy Euro, it's going to be, oh, we got to get that one game in. So if there's just a little bit less to do, I feel like this could have been one of my favorite games of the year. Now, I still really enjoy it, and I definitely am looking forward to seeing the final copy when they go through Kickstarter, if there's any changes or anything like that. I just don't know how often we're going to be able to play it just because it takes so long. And unfortunately, it's like, yeah, I love that game. It just can never get it to the table. And that was our preview of Sweetlands.
What'd you think? Are you going to get a sugar high from playing this game? Let us know in the comments below.
Once again, we'd like to thank the publisher for sending us a copy so that we could do this preview video. If you'd like to find out more information or back to Kickstarter, check out the links in our description below.
Until next time, I'm Lee.
And I'm Kenny. We go party like a board gamer.